In the next hour on Trial Story.
You do have a tumor. It was like a death sentence.
Grady Cater smoked cigarettes for decades. Now he's suing the tobacco company for causing his cancer.
Cigarette companies admit nothing.
But the defense claims Cater knew about the risks.
They don't put warning labels on Harley Davidsons. Why? Because you don't have to tell people things you already know.
In the next hour on Trial Story, from opening statements to the verdict, tobacco on trial.
This is the glamorous side of smoking.
They say nicotine isn't addictive.
This isn't.
How could they say that?
Be happy, go lucky. Winston tastes good like a...
Here's the precious taste in smoking today.
The American Cancer Society claims that nearly 1 in every 5 Americans will die from tobacco use.
Yes, I enjoyed smoking. If you were tense or nervous, it helped. If you were upset, it helped. If you were happy, it helped.
66-year-old Grady Cater of Jacksonville, Florida, was raised on a tobacco farm. He started smoking in 1947 when he was just a teenager. His smoking habit grew to 1.5 packs a day.
I continued smoking in the morning and smoke going to work. And when I got to work, I would smoke, and I just smoked continually. And the last thing I did before I went to bed was smoke a cigarette.
Let's take a Winston break.
In the 1950s and 60s, cigarette ads and celebrity endorsements were everywhere.
That's why I smoke Viceroy. Thank you. Lucy, you're so good to me.
You see how easy it is to keep a man happy?
6 months ago, Claire made a promise to her family and to herself. The promise was she'd quit smoking by the time her next birthday came around.
Later public service announcements also appeared, suggesting that cigarette smoking could be dangerous.
The problem is that smokers don't live too long. This tastes like crap.
Cater's family tried to get him to quit. Grady Jr. even mailed his dad medical photos of lungs from non-smokers and smokers.
One of them was a fleshy pink, soft type of texture it looked like on the picture, and the other looked like a dried prune. The first thing I thought about was my father, because I wanted my father around for a long time.
I tried to quit cold turkey by throwing them in the garbage can, throw them out the window of the car, saying I don't want to smoke these things.
We would have just a deep discussion about it and I'd say, do you want to die and leave me? I don't want to see this happen to you. And he would honestly sit there and cry the same as I was crying. And then as soon as the conversation was over, he would get out and walk past me and go outside and light up a cigarette.
Every time I'd quit smoking, I really didn't have no desire to do anything. I just wanted to be by myself, and I was just the most miserable guy that you could imagine. I was addicted, really addicted to the nicotine.
For 44 years, Cater continued to smoke. Finally, he quit cold turkey in January 1991.
I started having night sweats, and when I spit up, I noticed there was a speck of blood in it.
Take a deep breath in and then cough. Good, deep breath.
Cater went to see lung specialist Dr. Bruce Yergin and soon learned he had lung cancer.
From my examination, from the way the x-ray looked, it appeared that this was a localized tumor and that we had caught it in time and that hopefully there would be no chance of a spread.
He said something to the point, I hate to tell you this, but you do have a tumor. And I think he gave me the location. At that point, I don't remember much that happened, but it was like a death sentence.
It's like, is he going to be here, next week, next year? You don't know.
I think we just held each other and cried.
2 weeks later, Cater underwent major surgery.
They were wheeling him down the hall, and I've honestly never seen such terror in a person's eyes. And at that time, I felt like I may never see him alive again.
She never left my side. 14 days? 11 days. Just a minute.
The tumor was removed, and so too was 1/3 of Cater's lung. The cancer has now been in remission for over 5 years.
We still live every day not knowing whether that cancer will come back.
Grady Cater smoked Lucky Strike cigarettes for 25 years. He and his wife Millie are suing the makers of Lucky Strike cigarettes for failing to warn them about the dangers of smoking.
Medical science discovered that cigarettes were related to lung cancer in the 1930s, and it was proven in the 1940s. Cigarette industry ignored all that.
Norwood Wilner, the Carter's attorney, says that in fact the tobacco industry started a campaign to confuse the public in the 1950s.
Costs due to smoking disappear.
They met in the Plaza Hotel in New York in 1953, and they agreed to deny that cigarettes were hazardous. They agreed to cast doubt on all of the good scientists who were trying to bring this information to the public.
Everything going all right?
Brown and Williamson's attorney, Tom Bezanson, says Grady Cater was warned about the health hazards of smoking.
Grady Cater had heard all about the risks associated with smoking and went ahead and elected to smoke, knowing those risks. He chose to take those risks. He chose to smoke. He enjoyed smoking while he was doing it. And when it came time for him to decide to quit, when he was motivated to quit, he did so.
You may get cancer, but I doubt you'll get the truth from cigarette companies. I was a model for cigarette ads, and I convinced many young people to smoke.
Since 1954, the tobacco industry has been sued hundreds of times. Less than 30 cases have actually gone to trial since 1985.
It was the latest in a string of victories for the tobacco industry. Cambridge postal worker George Cotler began the lawsuit before he died of lung cancer in 1986.
I'm scared to sleep at night. Why are you scared to sleep at night? Well, a lot of time I wake up choking.
His widow and son are suing American Tobacco for $17 million.
I'm very disappointed in the verdict.
It was an emotional day for Yvonne Rogers and her 2 children.
We found that Richard Rogers bore a greater responsibility for the condition that caused his death than did the actions of the defendants.
In each case, tobacco companies have blamed the victims, bankrupted the opposing side, and hired top lawyers and experts to show that the cause of cancer is unknown. In 1988, a jury awarded the estate of Rose Cipollone $400,000 in the first and only monetary verdict against tobacco.
This is the end, and I'm glad I did it. I did it for her.
But it wasn't the end. The verdict was overturned on appeal, and after a long legal battle, the plaintiff dropped the case because it was too expensive to continue the fight.
Who is responsible for Grady Cater's lung cancer? Did Brown and Williamson know of the dangers of smoking for decades, but deliberately deceive the public? Or did Grady Cater freely choose to smoke despite adequate warnings? In the next hour, we'll see a legal David take on a corporate Goliath.
Each year, approximately 3 million people will die worldwide as a result of smoking. That's according to the World Health Organization.
You're going to be mouth on the mouthpiece for me. And we're just going to breathe nice and relaxed. Then I'm going to say take a big breath in. Squeeze it out, squeeze it out, squeeze.
5 years after Grady Cater was diagnosed with lung cancer,
all right,
he gets a chance to fight back in a court of law.
We will prove that the lung cancer came from Lucky Strike cigarettes that he smoked from 1947 when he was 16 years old, up until 1972 when he switched brands to some other brands, some filter brands.
Carter's attorney, Norwood Wilner, says Brown and Williamson is negligent. The defendant took over American Tobacco Company, the makers of Lucky Strike, in 1995.
They didn't use reasonable care in their marketing of their product, in getting the word out to people that they were dealing with a deadly product. The defendant, Brown and Williamson, was aware of what was happening and decided that really it had to stay in the business.
Defense attorney Bruce Scheffler says when Cater started smoking, the tobacco industry didn't know about the dangers.
In the 40s, there were some speculations about lung cancer and a variety of factors. Everything from road tar to electric poles to cars, exhaust from cars, to air pollution, and smoking. The American Medical Association, the American Cancer Society, together reviewed all of the evidence in the 40s and came to the conclusion that there was no reason for doctors to advise their patients who are smokers to stop smoking because of lung cancer.
The defense also claims that when the dangers were known, the public was informed.
This message is brought to you by the American Cancer Society.
I get lung cancer. So take some advice about smoking and losing from someone who's been doing both for years. If you don't smoke, don't start. If you do smoke, quit. Don't be a loser.
But when a person quits smoking after 10 to 15 years, his risk of lung cancer is like that of someone who never smoked. Now, Mr. Carter smoked Lucky Strikes up until 1973. If he had quit in 1973, his risk would have been that of a non-smoker. But he didn't quit.
Call your first witness, Mr. Williamson.
Will we call Dr. Bruce Jurgen to the stand, please?
The area from here up here is your lung.
Lung specialist Dr. Bruce Jurgen says Carter's chest x-rays revealed a tumor.
This side looks relatively normal until you get to here. And the white area, this is the extent of the abnormality.
Jurgen sent Carter for tests.
The diagnosis from this report was adenocarcinoma.
Which is?
Which is a cancer of the lung.
2 weeks later, Carter underwent major lung surgery.
They put rib spreaders in there, opened the ribs. He saw the tumor, took out the of Mr. along with the lymph nodes.
Is his lung cancer from cigarette smoking?
Yes. The overwhelming scientific evidence is that smoking does cause lung cancer. It's the #1 cause of lung cancer, and it's irrefutable.
Jurgen calls smoking an addiction. He says only 20% of the people who want to quit actually can.
People who've actually had cancer of the larynx, where they've had their entire voice box taken out, about 40% of them will go back and smoke. I've had patients and have patients now in my practice today, as we're sitting here, that have had lung cancer removed, stopped smoking for 6 months, 9 months, a year, resumed smoking.
Though Carter's cancer is in remission, Jurgen says it may come back.
It's possible, particularly with adenocarcinoma, which is the kind that he had, is a very aggressive tumor, that he still is at risk for developing lung cancer again.
The plaintiffs claim that for decades the tobacco industry knew that smoking was hazardous to your health, but lied to the public. At this point, they play the video recording of the late Robert Hyman, the former CEO of American Tobacco.
From 1954 until 1980, it was American Tobacco's position that cigarettes are not injurious to your health.
That is so.
Hyman claimed that some scientists condemned the cigarette research.
They will tell you that this whole statistical machine is a reprehensible propaganda campaign, that it's based on spurious statistics, and that it is socially irresponsible.
And I think people felt that that was just uncalled for and indicated an arrogance and an insensitivity to the health of the consumer that was inexcusable.
We would call Dr. Alan Feingold.
Dr. Feingold is a lung specialist and says most of his patients are smokers. He calls tobacco a public health threat.
I'm not charging Mr. Carter or you to do this. I'm doing this because I have to. It's my duty to do this. I'm doing this for the lady who I bronchoscoped yesterday who's going to die of lung cancer soon.
Feingold says half of all people who smoke die from a smoking-related disease.
My patients tell me, I'll continue to smoke. What difference does it make? I'll die at 75 instead of 77. But guess what? That's not true at all. The average number of years of life lost in a smoker who dies of a smoking-related disease is 23 years. There is nothing in our society, short of shooting heroin, doing something terribly illegal, there's nothing in our society that comes close. It's the most dangerous thing that you can do.
Feingold says the connection between smoking and lung cancer was first reported in a medical journal in 1936.
90% of the lung cancers were caused by cigarette smoking. That's the figure we use today.
By the 1950s, Feingold says, doctors knew smoking was harmful, yet the tobacco industry spent millions denying.
To say that all of these people were wrong You know what it amounts to? It's a lie. And it's a criminal lie. Because it resulted in the death of all these people. And in fact, it resulted in Grady Cater's cancer.
As director of the National Cancer Institute.
Yet the defense argues that in the 50s, the medical community was evenly divided on what causes lung cancer.
We do not say that smoking is a cause of cancer. There are other factors such as air pollution. It is possible that heavy cigarette smoking or smoking may be one of these factors.
But isn't it also crucial, sir? Isn't the thing that we're talking about, sir, was what the medical and scientific community as a whole were saying about lung cancer?
Exactly.
Now,
exactly.
let me ask you this question.
I want to answer that. Because you asked me a question, I want to answer. I want to answer.
Doctor, let him ask another question.
I shouldn't answer the last question, Your Honor?
No, sir.
Okay.
Now, sir, isn't it true that in 1958, half of the physicians in the country were not convinced or were not sure that smoking causes lung cancer?
No, it was not true.
The cigarette industry contradicts itself because on the one hand they want to blame their customers for smoking and they say their customers should have known that cigarettes were dangerous. Okay, but then they turn around and they say, but they're not dangerous. We deny that cigarettes are dangerous.
While everyone has been advised that smoking causes lung cancer, and it's been warnings on the packages, scientific investigation about the real remaining questions continues. So both are true.
Cigarette smoking is a...
History was made in 1964 when the Surgeon General condemned cigarette smoking.
Cigarette smoking is related to higher death rates in a number of disease categories.
The report hit the country like a bombshell. It was front-page news and the lead story on every radio and television station in the United States.
In the face of this overwhelming scientific evidence, what did the tobacco industry do? What was the American public subject to from the tobacco industry? Misinformation.
It recognizes that smoking is one of many environmental factors which need further study.
The great majority of people who smoke excessively do not develop lung cancer.
The fundamental cause of lung cancer is not known.
The first warning was placed on cigarette packs in 1966. Caution, cigarette smoking may be hazardous to your health.
It doesn't talk about lung cancer, it doesn't talk about death, it doesn't talk about heart attacks.
In 1963, Brown and Williamson's parent company, British American Tobacco, commissioned scientists to study the effect of nicotine on the body. 3 decades later, 4,000 pages of internal memos, reports, and letters were stolen and made public.
Next,
I was a spy.
The man who stole the secret documents.
The question was, how do you feel about smoking? And I said, well, I smoke, but I can quit any time. Perfect answer.
And that's how paralegal Merrill Williams says he was hired in 1988 by one of the law firms representing Brown and Williamson.
First of all, we got somebody who's sympathetic to us because he's hooked. And secondly, he doesn't believe he's hooked.
Williams says his job was to go through confidential documents that could be potentially damaging to the tobacco company in any legal suit.
You always had this, recurrence of these people who were creating science. Well, it wasn't the scientists who were creating science, it was the lawyers.
Williams says the documents prove that B&W knew that smoking causes cancer and that nicotine was addictive. And they knew this over 30 years ago, but didn't tell the public.
I was helping the assassins. Cancer, heart disease, emphysema. They knew these things were caused by the use of the product.
For 4 years, Williams stole 4,000 confidential documents, memos, and letters while no one was looking.
I was a spy.
Rather than addressing issues that he thought were there in any straightforward way, what does he do? He spirits them out of the premises in the dead of night, hidden under his coat or in his shoe.
I took them out with a girdle, and I'd stuff them down there. I would use a subterfuge, noise inhibitor, such as the purchase of some potato chips, and when I went by the guard, I would, eat munching some potato chips.
This kind of sneaky, illegal behavior does not strike me as the most productive way to engage in a dialogue.
They were never wanting to give up any documents.
For the first time, these secret documents are used in evidence against the tobacco company.
The alkaloid, alkaloid is the nicotine, appears to be intimately connected with the phenomena of tobacco habituation tolerance and or addiction. These researchers saw long in advance that addiction and tolerance were intimately related in nicotine.
How on earth can you approve of the use of stolen goods in a trial?
Another secret memo was written that same year. Its author was Addison Yeaman, the former general counsel for Brown and Williamson.
We are then in the business of selling nicotine, an addictive drug effective in the release of stress mechanisms. I found that incredible. They cause or predispose to lung cancer. The product was addictive, and that lung cancer was the result of this product. That combination, if understood by the public, would probably have saved a great many lives.
This kind of speculation, which is self-serving to a plaintiff's claim, is simply not allowed.
Another secret memo from 1957 reveals that the defendant was using code words to hide the relationship between cigarettes and cancer.
The ability of their product to cause zephyr. Zephyr is a code word used internally for reasons of secrecy to mean cancer.
Do you tell your patients you may have zephyr? Hate to be facetious.
It's not funny. I mean, we're talking about lung cancer here. No, it's not proper to use a code name in a document, in a scientific document, to refer to this lung cancer.
Plaintiff's call, Plaintiff Grady Cater.
Carter was an air traffic controller for the FAA. He retired in 1990 as a manager.
To the end of 1950s, that's probably up to a pack and a half a day.
Started in the morning, the first thing when my feet would hit the floor, I'd smoke a cigarette.
I can remember sometimes him lighting one cigarette with the other cigarette.
Carter admits seeing articles warning of the health hazards in the 1960s, but he claims the tobacco industry denied it.
We believe the anti-cigarette theory is a bum rep. Therefore, we're not going to knuckle under to the Times or anyone else who tries to force us to accept a theory which, in the opinion of men who should know, is half-baked.
If you were a smoker, you wanted to smoke, you would believe what the tobacco company. You would say, okay, the company ought to know more about their product than anybody else.
Carter tried to stop smoking many times over the last 30 years, but nothing worked.
There was a series of shots that was in my earlobes, I believe, and temples and in the nose. Then there was a liquid that was purple. They told me what it was, but I don't remember.
Well, the urge to smoke didn't go away.
At work, Carter says a friend gave him a pack of cigarettes.
I walked around the building, fingering those cigarettes, and knew how miserable I felt, and I knew if I lit that little cylinder that everything in the world would be fine. I took it out of my pocket and I lit it.
And when you sucked that smoke into your lungs, what happened?
I immediately started feeling better, like walking out of a dark cloud into a bright room.
But in February 1991, Carter's whole world stopped when he learned he had lung cancer.
I was devastated, shocked.
Probably for the first time that I'd ever seen in my father's eyes that he realized that he had mortality. He had always gotten more awards at everything he ever did. He was always president at everything he ever did. He always did everything better than anybody else had done it when he was in these organizations. The last thing he took off at night was a cape with a red S on the front. And to think for a moment that he actually was mortal, for him and for me both, it was a real stark reality.
Before his surgery, Carter accidentally overheard a conversation between his doctors.
They would find out if there was cancer had got to the lymph nodes, and he would know that in 15 minutes to 30 minutes while I was on the table.
We just sew him back up and send him home and let him die.
He was so very sick that I even wondered in the hospital, was he going to make it out of here?
I'm so proud of my son.
During cross-examination, defense attorney Tom Riley says that for Carter to claim he wasn't warned in the 1950s and 60s is ridiculous.
December 21st, 1953, and it's entitled, "Smoke It's in the News." Do you recall seeing that back in 1953?
No.
The next one is from January 24, 1964, called Verdict on Cigarettes, Guilty as Charged, and it's captioned Government Report Nails Down Smoking Hazards.
No, sir.
You never saw that before?
No, sir.
By 1954, polls were showing that 90% of the American public had heard these claims.
You saw the warning label on the package of Lucky Strike, right?
Yes, sir.
Now that I'm gone, I tell you, don't smoke. Whatever you do, just don't smoke.
That was my father shortly before his death from lung cancer. A few months later, my mother died, a lifelong smoker who suffered from emphysema. Are you still smoking?
And you knew when you saw that the American Cancer Society opposed cigarette smoking because it caused lung cancer?
That was probably one of the times I tried to quit, sir. The information they had in 1947, 1950, 1960, 1970, American Tobacco Company never said that their cigarettes were hazardous, even to this day in this courtroom. But this statement has been made, smoking did cause lung cancer.
The plaintiff's called Millie Carter.
Millie Carter married Grady in 1983. She says her husband was miserable when he tried to quit.
He was lightheaded. I've seen him sit on the side of the bed in the mornings reading the newspaper, and he would just be shaking and trembling. I would say something like, well, would you like me to invite the children over for dinner? And he said, I just don't want to see anybody right now. I'm just too miserable.
When Grady first started spitting up blood, he didn't tell his wife.
I had disappointed her so many times about quit smoking, and I didn't want to disappoint her again.
And then you'd learn that he had lung cancer, right? On February the 14th.
It was on Valentine's Day.
What did Dr. Yergy tell you?
He walked into the room and I said, this is Valentine's Day, it's Sweetheart's Day, please don't give us any bad news.
What did he say?
He told us that he had lung cancer. Both of us, we had so many friends who had lung cancer, and so many of them have died since. And so we just felt that that's what we were being handed, was a death sentence.
The defense points out that Carter never told his wife that it was impossible for him to quit.
There was many times whenever he took cigarettes, packages, ashtrays, cigarette lighters, just dumped it all in the garbage, and he said, I am really going to try this time. If that's not a serious attempt to quit, I don't know what is.
But defense attorney Bill Pritchard shows that Carter was finally able to quit.
If someone ever tells you that you have lung cancer, you will be shocked into doing something that you never in your life thought you could do.
Yes,
that is the biggest shock that you can ever go through. I can sit here and tell you that right now for both of us. It's like death staring you in the face.
Every time I see it now, it reminds me of my dad, and it's a bumper sticker that you see on cars occasionally, and it says, cancer cures smoking. And in my father's case, that's exactly what happened.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carter. You can step down.
The plaintiffs rest. The American Cancer Society claims that about 177,000 people developed lung cancer in 1996.
Grady, if you look at the x-ray, you can see the right lung. There are no infiltrates or abnormal shadows that would make me be suspicious for a recurrent tumor. Then in the left side of your lung, you can see these little staples here. These are the staples used by the surgeon to remove your left upper lobe. And the remainder of the lung, like a sponge, kind of opened up to fill that space. Everything overall, Grady, looks excellent.
Brown & Williamson is the third largest cigarette maker in the United States. Based in Louisville, Kentucky, it manufactures 20 different brands. In 1994, B&W bought American Tobacco Company.
The American Tobacco Company. America's leading manufacturer of cigarettes. Lucky Strike, Pell-Mell.
Brown & Williamson Tobacco Company calls Dr. Peter O'Hanley.
O'Hanley is an epidemiologist who studies disease patterns to determine their causes.
I'm not able to definitively state what is the cause of his cancer.
There are questions, significant questions, remaining yet in the proof of whether or not smoking does cause lung cancer.
It doesn't also mean if a person gets cancer and they smoke, then it was due to the smoking.
O'Hanley insists the cause of Carter's cancer is unknown.
There is no test available to state with kind of any certainty in a courtroom to say, yeah, this is the reason why he developed the cancer. There's just not a test available.
Cross-examination, Mr. Wilner.
Well, if there are no tests that can prove causation, I guess these tests don't disprove causation either, do they?
It's kind of, I feel like there's like a tricky element here. I'm trying to, I just don't think that there's, you can't prove the disease was caused by a particular association, and it doesn't necessarily mean the opposite either.
The opposite means you can't disprove it either, can you?
That's true.
The mechanism by which an ordinary healthy cell transforms into a cancer cell is not understood.
We don't know every step that a cell takes when it becomes cancerous. But just like we don't know every step that a baby takes when it grows up, we still know what causes babies, and we still know what causes cancer.
O'Hanley admits that the risk of getting lung cancer is increased if you smoke.
But not all people who have lung cancer smoke. So there are other reasons why people could have a lung cancer.
What are the reasons?
There's exposure to radon. There's certain dietary factors that may contribute. I don't precisely know the answer, but as a physician, I agree. Smoking, in my mind, increases your chance for getting cancer of the lung.
Then, in a blow to the defense, O'Hanley passionately says,
even though we don't know the precise answer, we have a public health message here to tell people that it's inappropriate to smoke. And if they do smoke, you tell them to stop smoking.
All of the doctors that are hired by the cigarette industry have very difficult jobs to do. They must deny that cigarettes cause cancer. Some of those doctors, of course, are going to occasionally give honest answers, and that was one.
I do. The defense calls pathologist Dr. Gary Pearl. There are 3 types of lung cancers, and Carter suffers from adenocarcinoma. Pearl claims his cancer was not caused by smoking.
Have you discovered whether or not peripheral adenocarcinomas have an association with tobacco?
These are the tumors that do not have an association with tobacco.
Adenocarcinomas that are found out in that distant perimeter of the lung are peripheral adenocarcinomas, and there are a good many studies that demonstrate that they're not associated with smoking.
During cross-examination, Pearl admits that nearly half of all smokers die prematurely of some form of cancer.
Do you agree that cigarette smokers are at risk of cancer of the esophagus of 760%?
Yes.
Or thereabouts?
Yes.
Almost 7 times the risk of non-smokers?
Yes.
And cancer of the bladder, 286% above non-smokers. You agree with that?
Yes.
And cancer of the lung, 2,236% above non-smokers. You agree with that?
Yes.
You agree that 90% of all lung cancers in the United States are attributable to cigarette smoking?
By a risk analysis, yes.
One study also shows that lung cancer increased tremendously from 1940 until 1990. Wilner calls it an epidemic, yet Pearl can't explain it.
Aren't you here as an expert?
Yes.
Well, what's your expert opinion? Do you have one?
In the literature, there have been attributions to cigarette smoking.
Attributions?
It's been attributed. Attribution.
What? The word attributed, does that mean it was caused by cigarette smoking?
I can't use the word caused.
So let me get this straight. You're not saying that Mr. Carter's cancer is not due to smoking. You're saying you can't say.
That's correct.
Why not?
Because I don't know that it specifically caused it.
Okay. Do you know of anything else?
No, I don't.
This is not a commercial. What you're looking at and what you're seeing is the real thing. These bids from tobacco buyers are sometimes as subtle as a wink or as direct as a shout.
Today, the tobacco industry generates over $50 billion annually and employs hundreds of thousands of people, from farmers to factory workers to corporate executives.
You swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
In 1994, the CEOs of the nation's tobacco giants testified before Congress. Their comments were all the same.
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive. And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And today?
Is nicotine addictive?
I don't think so. It is true that it can be difficult to quit smoking because it's a thing that people like to do. I think over half of the people in the U.S. who've ever smoked have quit.
If someone you loved, someone young, came to you and said, you know, Tom, I'm going to start smoking. I think it's pretty cool, and I'm going to start smoking. Do you want them to?
No. There is a risk associated with it, and why assume a risk if you don't want to?
The tobacco industry has a very serious multi-billion-dollar problem. We need more cigarette smokers, pure and simple.
Every day, 2,000 Americans stop smoking, and another 1,100 also quit. Actually, technically, they die.
Before you smoke, think about your family and protect them.
Show your love by letting every breath your baby takes be as pure as the first. Please don't smoke. There's a baby in the house.
The defense calls psychiatrist Dr. John Thompson.
He was smoking for 44 years.
Thompson says Grady Cater could have quit smoking at any time, but waited until he was forced to quit.
The family members were encouraging him to do so. He was becoming aware of the health risks and was aware of them throughout his life. But I'm not sure that he had the motivation until in 1991 he coughed up blood, and when he saw it, he quit.
Huh. You've got to be kidding. They've got to be kidding. They are just lying to anybody and everybody about it. Lying to teenagers. They're lying to just the general public because they know that it's addictive and they know that it hooks people.
Tobacco company warnings would not have helped Cater quit, the defense claims.
He decided that he enjoyed smoking, and that the risks that were reported with smoking were something that might happen to somebody else, but not to him.
He at times said, I have to stop reading or stop smoking, indicating that he didn't want to know any more information, that he knew the information. He said that he didn't have to ask his doctors about the information because he already knew what it was.
He would get this glaze over his eyes and shake his head yes, as if he was listening to you and actually wasn't listening to you at all. It's like you could almost see the volume knob go down and he click off.
He was a risk taker.
He flew airplanes. That's not something that I would be particularly interested in because for me that's too risky. He rode motorcycles, even though both of his sons one had an accident with a motorcycle and another one had gotten cut off and didn't ride motorcycles anymore. In the area of his diet, the doctors had told him several times that he needed to adjust his diet because of his cholesterol level, and yet he hasn't been able to comply with that.
Yeah, he ate hot dogs, that's true. He was a very careful pilot, and he did take his motorcycle out on Sundays.
Cigarette smoking was considered a habit until 1988. That year, the Surgeon General first called nicotine an addictive drug. Thompson disagrees.
Certainly the definition in 1964 required intoxication.
Well, wait a minute. 1964? Is that where your practice is in 1964?
No, sir.
How many people who use nicotine on a daily basis are addicted, according to Dr. Thompson?
Who use nicotine on a daily basis?
Affirmative.
Right. I don't think people are addicted when they use nicotine.
Zero. None.
Right.
No matter what you call it, you can still quit if you want to, and people do.
The Surgeon General has said that the process of nicotine addiction is similar to the process of addiction for heroin and cocaine.
A product that's as hard to kick as heroin and as easy to get as candy that over 500,000 kids buy every single day.
Lucky's taste grab.
In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, celebrity endorsements were common.
Here's something else you ought to try. Lucky's Strike.
I've been smoking all my life. It's terrible, but smoking calms my nerves. I don't think it affected my daughter.
But then cigarette commercials were taken off the air in 1972 and replaced by public service announcements.
I always tell my daughter, don't smoke.
Your client's cigarettes killed my wife.
In the 1990s, Hollywood has discovered a new villain, the tobacco company executives.
Did you tell her that cigarette smoking could kill her? Many times. You begged her to quit, didn't you? And she did. Many times. But she'd start up again. She was addicted.
Have you ever heard of Nicolin? No. It's an additive they put in cigarettes for flavoring. It's also a known carcinogen. Mr. President, let's talk about Nicolin. What about it? It's a flavoring.
No. We know you know what it is. We've read the lab reports. It is more than just a flavoring.
What could American have done to motivate Mr. Carter when his own wife couldn't motivate him to quit smoking? His children couldn't motivate him to quit smoking.
Defense attorney Bruce Shepler says the health hazards of excessive smoking have been well publicized for decades.
You don't see package inserts on eggs warning people that they can cause high cholesterol when you go to the supermarket. They don't put warning labels on Harley Davidsons telling you don't drive this fast or you could get in serious trouble. Why? Because you don't have to tell people things you already know. That's the law.
Cigarette companies admit nothing.
Plaintiff's attorney Norwood Wilner says the defendant is deceiving the public.
First, they'll say, well, cigarettes don't cause cancer. They don't cause any disease. It has not been scientifically established that cigarette smoking is a cause of lung cancer or any other human illness or injury. Not only the cause, a cause. Now, you know, where is the accountability? I mean, when is it going to stop?
It's not enough for him to say lung cancer in general is caused by smoking. Most of it's caused by smoking, so it must be caused by smoking in this guy. It doesn't work that way. He's got to show you the objective scientific evidence that indicates Mr. Carter's cancer was caused by smoking.
The plaintiffs insist Brown and Williamson knew for decades about the health risks of smoking. Their proof is in the secret documents.
They're in the business of selling nicotine, an addictive drug. That's their business.
The information of these reports is not sufficiently complete to justify any form of publication. They were preliminary reports.
I want a tobacco company to say, we are selling a product that will cause death and misery. We're selling a product that one-third or more of you are going to die.
No plaintiff in a case like this has ever received 1 red cent from a tobacco company. This jury of 5 men and 1 woman will now decide whether that streak should be broken. In the first vote, the jury was split 4-2 in favor of Brown and Williamson.
He smoked. He knew the pros and cons of smoking.
He's partially to blame.
The jury continued to deliberate for 9 hours over 2 days.
We, the jury, return the following verdict. Was there negligence on the part of defendant Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corporation? Answer, yes. Were the Lucky Strike cigarettes unreasonably dangerous and effective? Answer, yes.
The jurors say the secret documents were the deciding factor.
They knew that it was addictive, and they knew that smoking caused cancer, and they did not tell the public.
There can be no mistake whatsoever about what they knew and when they knew it, and the fact still remains that they did not reveal it, for by law they had to.
The plaintiffs ask for $1.5 million, but receive only half.
The $750,000, to me personally, was not enough.
We were holding Grady partially responsible for his actions.
If it had been my decision, I'd have given him the $1.5 million, and I possibly would have doubled it.
I think Grady Cater was a pioneer. He had the courage to stand up against this industry.
It's a one-of-a-kind verdict.
But is it? The 40-year tobacco wars appear to be heading for a showdown. To date, more than 20 states have sued to recover billions of dollars in Medicaid costs for smoking-related illnesses. Liggett, one of the smallest tobacco companies, recently settled with the attorneys general, and the company admitted that cigarettes cause cancer, that nicotine is addictive, and that some cigarette ads were aimed at children.
They've killed our children for far too many years.
And I think this will bring the tobacco companies to their knees.
Settlement negotiations are underway between other tobacco giants and anti-smoking forces in and out of government.
This is a letter that I received.
The day after the verdict, Grady Cater received a personal note from a smoker dying of cancer.
Mr. Grady Cater, a truly brave, courageous person who has given me the strength and hope to carry through what I have to do next. I want you to know that I would have done exactly what you did, and I'm very proud of you, Grady. Mrs. Grady, I know you already know it, but let me say it anyhow. You have a fine, strong husband whom you can certainly be proud, forever proud. Would love to meet you both.
Grady never did meet her. She passed away a few days later.
Once that someone has diagnosed that you had cancer, life is more precious to you. Each day is much brighter. Love is deeper. But there's certainly not fear. I think there always will be.